we're going to talk today about news engagement with the third sector, basically how news institutions engage with communities and universities. We'll just give a bit of background about ourselves. My name's Gary, I'm based at Leeds University in Northern England. It's quite a cold place. We used to have a really good football team a long time ago. But anyway, we're sort of like business people in a way. We're both business academics, but we're quite fascinated in the last few years about actually looking at how business can actually engage with communities, or the lack of, or if you want to call it the lack of engagement from business departments in universities with communities. So we're very much looking at that kind of like revisionist stream of actually seeing how we can maybe tap into the potential of communities and actually, instead of in the past of just exploiting community information, using that information to try and stimulate some regeneration and development.
Oh, okay. I'm Anita Greenhill. I'm from Manchester. I don't think I have much more to add. My background's a bit more sociology, so that's part of the reason it's feeding into trying to explore communities. This particular project, I live in inner city Manchester. You might have heard Moss Side, Hume, these places. So I'm quite active in my own community and very much listening to people how they feel about the relationship, because the university is right on our doorstep and some big changes have been happening recently. There's multi-million-pound redevelopment of 2 universities encroaching out into the communities, and there's been a lack of a communication consideration of the impact, and the project sort of stimulated my ideas of, okay, if all this is happening, how and in what way should the media be playing a relationship between the 2 parties that are involved? So the university has a big agenda about engaging with universities. So we explored that and to see how successful or problematic it's been.
Okay, so what we're basically going to talk about today is this National Coordinating Centre for Public Engagement. I've got my false teeth in. We've got just a small little project which we used to develop the work. And basically what we're trying to look at is really this just the role of local news media. How does it actually link between bring together information, knowledge, and the work of the universities, which have been traditionally very much islands, islands of development and islands of activity, and actually how we can actually transfer that across and interact with the community. And the idea was actually how the news media, local news media, can actually try and pull these 2 things together to build this interaction. And there's a report we've actually done on this, which we've actually written up, and it's available at that website. So I think you've all got a copy of the slides. You can easily access the site.
Okay, so after the project, we thought that we'd try and model some of the ideas to see if we can get a clearer picture, cutting away some of the mess about the relationship between different types of communication that's been going on. So the model is talking about media, and what we can see is that it's not just about news as exciting catastrophic events or gossip, but we're seeing that there's, particularly at the community level, a variety of types of information, and very much more makes sense. There's more emphasis on entertainment. So within the news front for local areas, it's not just about things being good, things being bad, but they also have to stimulate you in various ways, make you happy, interested, and the whole branch of what's being considered news is starting to emerge. We see young people, for example, not just young people, but everybody, also interested in happy slapping sort of looking at when people are hurting themselves, slapstick humour. It's all being incorporated into how people view news and what's entertaining. So what we've looked at is both serious news, so there is hard-hitting stories when you've got, for example, muggings and the death of dignitaries, things like that. Of course they're newsworthy. But also we have less things, or things that are not so globally popular, so you can create a sort of difference or separate out the types of news. And then we also feel that within the community a variety of news sources are being drawn upon. And if you break them down, it includes newspapers, very much now a lot more online surfing, looking around, looking at entertainment news. This is why we featured entertainment as a large component. Still radio, local television, and other forms of mass media.
Okay, that's good. Cheers. So basically, we've got this kind of like not sauce what you put onto your fish and chips, but what we call a news source, and actually getting information back. And what we're trying to say is really, where's this news coming from? How does the environment link to each other? What is the interaction? So really, the news source is really the interacting, mediating variable, which is bringing the environment, the community together with the university. Now, the big issues, the massive issues, is that these things now, these universities are massive, big, I'd call them corporate businesses. You know what I mean? Very strong brands, very, very powerful commercial units making billions and billions of pounds. The University of Manchester is bigger. It's got a bigger turnover than Manchester United Soccer Club. So it just shows you these are massive, powerful economic forces bringing in millions, in some instances even billions. And in a way, but they're very much islands, and islands of expertise, knowledge, and that's partly cultural, partly historical, partly the way the professionalisation, or you want to call it the secretisation of the people working there. So I think what's happened since the 1960s, this is just the elements of the UK which I've lived in, I've lived there all my life, is that the universities have moved away from the communities, no doubt about it. And a lot of these universities were actually set up to serve the community. You know, in Manchester, Salford, Leeds, these kind of northern universities were, were very much set up to try and work with communities and to regenerate and redevelop. But they've pulled away. The problem is they're pulling even further away. That's one of the big issues. So what we're trying to say is, what kind of information is coming from there to there? What kind of information is coming back from them to them? Now, from this angle, the problem with the university is the reward system. Is that if someone appears in England, you all have heard of the BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation. If you appear on the BBC, you're given stars. People give you a lot of kudos. If you appear on local news media, such as the Manchester Evening News, which is the major local newspaper in the major local newspaper in the Greater Manchester area, and the second biggest in the UK, it's not got the same kudos. So what we're trying to say is that the news has got less kudos here, and the amount of impact it's got there is also questionable as well. So we're very much interested in that news trying to permeate between those two different entities. I'm just going to keep on. Yep. So basically, what we're trying to do today is to look at some of these questions in which we want everybody to participate in with as we go along. Why do universities continue to follow a traditional approach to news dissemination, even though we're living in a globalised, big data, smart city, technological age, a huge amount of information? What are the similarities and differences in the underlying understanding of universities and local communities towards local news? Universities do have some long-term and existing relationships with the local community which are long-term. However, there's a notable shift towards more short-term project-driven activities with communities. Why is it that time and location play a significant role in news sharing and relationship building? And in what ways does the modern age of digital access and technological infrastructure, which is going to grow and grow with big data, play a significant role in the way universities are and are not engaging with their local communities? So today's presentation is really trying to answer those 5 questions. Going wrong way again.
So the first question, why do universities continue to follow a traditional approach to news dissemination? Now, what we looked at, and when I went in and started speaking to both the university in Manchester as well as the community, the first thing that hits you in the face is the type of structures that are in place. Big, huge buildings, huge amounts of people storing all their knowledge in libraries. It's all very structured, very, very systematic. Now, in the communities that I've been involved with who are doing projects, one of the first things that they spoke about was the problem of getting paid. So even when you're lucky enough to get some sort of grant or financial relationship with the university happening, how do you actually get the pay system to work? Often universities are paying monthly. They can't break into the system because it's all set up under computer processes. For the community, a number of people were trying to break out of unemployment. So they will only pay you either at the end of a project, which meant somebody on unemployment benefits loses their benefit because it immediately impacts. They don't have the capability to be able to understand and then react to that problem. So a number of these issues are still entrenched. And there's a reluctance on the university's behalf to change this or to consider some of this relationship. So it was one of the major first findings that we found. And we think this is interesting, not only in itself, but also if you're going to have a communication engagement process or underlying of community engagement, this has to change. There has to be some thinking about reapproaching some of these things.
Okay, so we've got a little picture from Lord of the Rings, which it's kind of like topical. But what we're basically saying is that in universities today, because a number of people in the room work in universities or participate with universities, etc. Universities, especially in the UK, are sort of like a lot of fear factor, a lot of people hiding away with this little swords pointing up to try and defend themselves. There's a lot of bullying going on, a lot of cultural pressure on people not to speak out and to toe party lines and to fit in with the rating and ranking system. So this hawk thing here is like the managers in universities going around where everybody hides away. So people are very, very reluctant to do things which are, if you want to call it, subversive, or not meeting what people tell them to do, or not ticking the right boxes. So a lot of people, like I said, are hiding away, and this is a bigger problem we find with a lot of our colleagues to try and get involved with things which may be different and interesting.
Okay, so then the second question we want to get you to think about as we move on. What are the similarities and differences in the underlying understandings of universities and local communities towards the local news? So how do universities see the news? How do local communities see the news? And are there any crossovers? Are there any similarities? Because most understandings are sort of put in these extreme opposites. This is for us, this is for them. This is good, this is bad. This type of relationship often has to be thought about. Okay. So if you think about local communities, there has been a big shift. They're starting to not only draw on traditional practices, music magazines or small newsletters that go around specific community groups. There has been a shift to go digital. So what we've seen in exploring hyperlocal news, for example, a very important issue for most local communities is local news. They want to know and understand things that are happening directly to themselves. So it is important, it remains important when things aren't working, when they are, when you know the people involved with the story. So this is important in terms of local understanding.
Let's just, we'll have to copy it again, right?
No, that's all right. So the link is an example of one type of local media group. I think if you click on the...
Is it copied?
It's on this other here.
Oh,
And then...
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, okay, so choosing it, yeah.
Okay, so this is one example, if you get an opportunity. It's quite a well-funded European local media initiative. And if you look and get a chance to click through further, you can see citizen journalism starting to spring up. So people writing about specifically what's going on within the community and finding often there's been an attack on journalists, their skills are being degraded, if they're given journalism outlets, they're often having to feed into the bigger news agenda. So there's been a bit of a gap or a schism between what big multimedia moguls want versus what local communities can present. And so there's some interesting growth happening in terms of people wanting to get local news out, going beyond just traditional ways of doing it. spoken about local communities. In contrast, there's quite a different approach to what universities themselves see as significant and how they're going to represent what's happening within the university. Two major issues. One is their international research profile. And this is dominating often 3/4 of what they want to be presented in the news. And we see if we go to the Manchester, because we're talking about Manchester, if we go to the website, even though they're talking about our city is thriving, very quickly we'll come across this is the other position, students. So there's two things that the university sees as important news positions. One is their international research profile, one is their relationships to students. So anything to do with drawing more students in, anything that has the Vice-Chancellor going out and kissing local babies, it's only about sort of the local relationship in terms of can we capitalise on having a nice smooth relationship. Either we want the appropriate students coming to our institution, or we want to, for example, in Manchester, if there's a wild drinking night, the kids have all been out, some sort of upturned problems from too much alcohol or, having a good time, the university very quickly swings into covering that up. It's all about, they will quickly show how, in contrast, how many children from the local area have been brought into the community. So you may get a small indication that there's been something happening. But the media departments that I spoke to said, oh no, that half of our time is built or about maintaining a calm relationship with some of the student ghettos. And the other part is, the very much even part of their budget is now paying people to be the mediator between local communities and trying to access that type of information before it gets into the press. So it's very much about controlling. There's a very big controlled element about the relationship between students and the university profile or this international research profile.
So there's a big wooden oak door here. So great door. It's not my door. She was my door. But universities and local communities do have long-term existing relationships. However, we find that one of the problems is that if you're in the community, or I've got the restart button on again. Quick restart. But they wanted some kind of door, some kind of entry point into the university. Just this massive island, this big fort or castle, if you want to call it. There, what is the entry point into the university? What is the door? Something they can identify, or something where they're welcomed and feel warm and they don't feel threatened. Because a lot of people in these local communities have had my sister included, have had a very, very bad experience of education, you know what I mean, from a young age. So like my sister here never goes back to school or anything, she didn't have no interest in schools. But their experience, but what I'm trying to say is that people like that out there who, just can't see what a university is for really. They just can't see the relevance of it, and they feel threatened by it, they just don't feel that there's a good entry point. And it's like with the community projects and trying to find that door is a very, very difficult thing to establish, I believe, for projects.
So importantly is considering the relationships. Relationships both between the community, what's happening within the community, but also if there can be relationships built between large institutions and small local issues, local people. So we found that it's quite intricately woven. The relationships, particularly with long-standing communities, have long histories. Family connections that have gone through a lot of time. People who've gone to school, they've married into marriage. There's a length of history and relationship that's being built. So this sometimes comes in contrast to the relationships that are being built within a university institution. So you've got relationships between academics. You've got relationships between the student and the academic. But there's quite a big difference between a community in which lives supposedly in quite close relationship to a community. So the two forms of community are quite different, and there isn't clear bridges often between. There are, I'm talking as a generalisation. There are some academics like myself who live locally, but the majority of the cases is they tend to live in Manchester anyhow, the local communities are quite poor. So a lot of the academics are living quite out of town in the more plush areas like Didsbury and Cheetham Hill, and so there's not even these relationships between academics on campus and the potential to build relationships with local communities. So it's quite it's not the norm. And this is another problem that we think needs to be considered. How can these relationships be built? And of course we know relationships take time. It's not going to be something quick.
It's not all problems, is it? We'll go a bit more to some solutions later on. There are some opportunities as well, because it's very much a fragmented landscape what's happening at the moment. So there's quite a lot of opportunities. We'll go to those a little bit later. But why is why is it that time and location play a significant role then in building these relationships and news sharing between communities and the university? Anita, because you
so again, when I was studying the local area in Manchester, I don't know if many people have been to Manchester. If you go to Hume, under this bridge is the Princess Parkway. So there's a massive highway that traditionally separated the campuses. And many people that I spoke to spoke about this bridge as the representation, the metaphor for their relationship between the way they see the university and the possibilities of building relationships, building a bridge. They were talking about many of the students. They felt they would never cross that bridge because they felt that on this side of the bridge is very, very scary. It's where all those gangs, drug-taking, evil people are. On this side of the bridge is a lovely, clean institution. So there are very real metaphors or very real and established ideas that get ingrained with physical locations, spatial temporal barriers that people then build up with legends and talk and reconfirm this over time.
So for local communities, obviously volunteer time is very, 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 very valuable, flexible and transient. But a lot of it's not really reported very well in most local media and from the universities. And really I think it's these voluntary time-like projects which could actually potentially lead to a lot of interaction into it and development between the two. So the voluntary element is an area we could explore a little bit further.
So as an indication that some of the quotes that I've had from people who I've spoken to, thinking about news and how it spreads out and can it cross over the difference between large institutions and communities. For example, one person I spoke to said, lots of people have not gone beyond the digital divide yet. So understanding that even if you think about local community news going digital, it can be a problem. Often what the universities are disseminating is all on the internet. They're going much to the electronic platform, so they presume in being able to speak and move to the future it's all going to be digital. So they are not utilising the internet or emails. Rapid, they're not in this fire-up, this digital culture, this digital zone. Not here anyway. So a lot of it is by relationship building, as we were just talking about. So we have a steady influx of our busiest days. We are people very much about word of mouth. When things get done within the community, we talk about it. We explain, we say, hey, come along, this is happening. Or people saw a flyer. They're not surfing around the internet to find out what's going on within the large institutions. They'll pick something up. A lot of the time, what we will have is we will have a project running, and we have loads of people show up. But this is 4 months later. So it has to have this very slow trickle effect. If it's not through word of mouth, people will see a flyer that's been up on a board or within a community centre 4 months after it's happened. So there might be an interest. But there's still a misunderstanding about the relationship of how slowly it disseminates out into the community.
Yeah, and I think in the future, this potentially the information divide between the professional elites and communities is probably going to grow more and more, because in the UK the plans are to invest. We're doing some work with IBM. Is to invest billions and billions of taxpayers' money into what they call smart cities, which are going to be information-rich, intelligent infrastructures, urban computing, in other words. So they're going to be urban spaces full of technology. And the vision is to have people who are going to live in them, people who are going to be smart, intelligent people, who are going to be wealthy people, who are going to be the people to be involved with, the successful people. But woe betide anybody who is poor or disabled or doesn't speak in the correct English way. Do you know what I mean? So what we're trying to say is that potentially these kind of problems, if we don't watch it, are going to get amplified. Because the government in the UK and also we've been in America, the same thing is they're convinced that technology is the answer. We work with academics that technology is the answer to urban development, urban regeneration, to everything. So we're at a delicate stage, I think, and this is why it's good that Martin's invited us to come here to just not talk about the project, but also to put in the context of what is happening, what is going to be happening over the next 20 years. And this is real, this is what the government's going to be rolling out, and it will come across throughout the European Union ultimately, So these issues are probably going to amplify.
So in terms of the question, in what ways do digital access and technological infrastructure play a significant role in the way universities are or are not engaging with their local communities, extending this technology idea? What is the answer? So for local news, it's often circulated by word of mouth. How can then we bridge a technology-driven news agenda with communities that want to hear things word of mouth? So we're going to have to think more about how this can happen. Does it have to be multi-platform? Is there more that people have to come out and speak in communities? It's not enough just to put pictures and maybe a blog or whatever from some academic behind a desk about the research. It's not enough. They need to come out and speak, and there has to be a personal relationship, and this is part of the relationship.
I think some of the problems of that, though, as well, is that often it's ideological, and these people actually feel that there's some kind of hero, So they feel like they're going to a community and they're going to be the hero who's going to... I talked to one lady, just building up from Anita, who's got a big government project, £5 million government project to go into communities in England and help look at the digital economy and the digital divide. And I was discussing with her, and she actually firmly believes ideologically that the issues are totally social issues, not economic, Whereas I don't believe that at all. I believe that the problems are economic and social, That we need the economics right to get the social bit right. So what I'm trying to say is there's an ideological position from all of these people. Ultimately, they think they're heroes, They think there's some kind of John Wayne character who's going to ride in to Dodge, and Dodge is going to be sorted out, It's like, that's what they believe. So, we've got a sense of realism, and the ideological can only go so far.
And further than this, the sharing of news is often exponential. It might slowly start. You get one or two people starting to talk. And if it's the right sort of thing, the way that a number of people are interested in it, it will explode. So it goes from a slow pace to bang, everybody in the whole community knows about it. So when working with local communities, it's important to consider this. What are the key people, the elders in the community? Is that the way that you get into discussing things with the community? Or if it's other issues, is it important that you know the young kids associated with a particular topic? Therefore, consult and consider them about how should we best talk about these things? How do we make it appropriate? How do we listen? So there has to be a listening and an understanding. If you want to build on this exponential growth, there has to be a core understanding of when going out into the community. So just as a definition to sort of build, we're moving towards getting you more involved rather than us just talking. As a base definition, what is news? News is defined as newly received or noteworthy information. So it's something that's happened quite quickly right now. You've heard the saying, yesterday's news. If it becomes yesterday's news, it's not newsworthy anymore. Especially about recent or important events. So this is why there is some difference between a large institution's understanding of what is newsworthy and also the community's understanding of what. So we've seen the relationships, the types of people involved, the types of information are all quite different. However, in terms of hyperlocal news, so digitally enabled local news, there's a very big interest about the potential of growing this. Now, and I think it's interesting, this quote has come from The Guardian just a little bit recently, 2010. They've said, the delivery of quality postcode level, rather than national, international level news, across most of the country is still a long way off. So the news companies haven't cracked an understanding about how to deliver news at a local level. The universities and large institutions aren't particularly understanding how to have news-worthy relationships between local communities. So we're continuing to see local communities not having a voice in much that's going on. And we want to, beyond this sort of project, keep thinking about how that can be improved. And as I say again, I'm working with my local community to try and build on people who probably are more knowledgeable than me at the community level, to also not only be talking to universities but also talk to communities themselves.
Shall I leave that bit? I think we're going to prototyping bit now and then coming back to that.
Right.
Okay. So what we're quite interested in, what we're going to do now is we're going to do a bit of activity work here, and we'll go back to this. If we get some time, we'll go back to the presentation. We're quite interested. We're quite interested in what we call prototyping, and prototyping the future. By prototyping the future, we're interested in looking at, not predicting the future, but actually trying to do something where we can look at the social, economic and ethical consequences of an action or an intervention. That could be an academic intervention. And we're interested in actually trying to shape or frame an agenda, how something may evolve. So that framing of agenda may be something like, how could universities interact better with communities? How could they interact and engage? And could we frame an agenda where universities are actually not just exploiting from communities, which we've tended to see for the last 40 years in Europe, UK, Ireland and America, and if you've been reading a lot of your literature, a lot of it's exploitation. I come to your community so I can take from you, I can go and write some nice papers and get a lot of money, get promoted. Because I'm not a very successful academic, So, well, you know what I'm trying to say, but this is what we see, don't we, really? This is the game, ultimately. So what we're saying is, can we frame a new agenda where actually we can build, the academics can contribute to something which builds something tangibly in terms of the community. So this is framing an agenda. Now, we cannot solve all society's problems, can we, overnight? We're not John Wayne or one of these heroes. But what we can do is try to look at different specific micro issues, little things, little issues, little change catalysts, which can actually, ultimately all these little catalysts can actually lead to a bigger change if we keep pushing. So what we're planning today, what's linked to this, is what we call this prototyping process. Prototyping, where we look at developing a prototype. Now, this prototype is a mixture of things which are all learned in theory and academic work, but ultimately also part of that theory and academic work is what we call a narrative imagery. A narrative imagery, where you yourselves write a narrative. Now, this could be, in the past we've used people to write stories, fictional stories, do artwork, but today we're going to do a little exercise which is going to be you writing for us in small groups. We'll divide it into small groups. A narrative which is going to be based on a video we're going to show you. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you the video. Okay, we're going to play the video to everybody. Then we're going to ask you to spend 5 minutes to write a narrative. And then 5 minutes after that to write another narrative. So we're going to have 2 narratives. Are we going to get them on their own or in groups?
Probably in a couple of people together.
Okay, a couple of people. We'll explain it. So we're going to write 2 narratives. One's going to be a community narrative. So you're going to write a short journalist piece, narrative, a written narrative, which is going to have a headline, basically a stream of consciousness, a stream of thoughts. You're going to articulate what you see in that video, right? And I want you to write it and report it. And we're going to video it that way. So we're going to invite everybody to come to the front. Invite to the front the groups, and you're going to report that to everybody else. We'll select a few, we'll pick up two or three. We'll try and get everybody on at some stage. So one of these narratives is going to be the community, right? So you're going to write the piece as if you were reporting that to your fellow members of the community where you live. Okay? That's the first job, so write the narrative in response to the video for the community. The second one is I want you to then try and articulate it using language you would deem appropriate if you were working for a university. Okay? Or if you're not in the university, a major professional organisation like a council or local authority. So then you're going to report to some senior figure in your university or your council, and I want you to articulate it in that language, okay, which you would present to those people. Is that okay? Is there anything you want to add? So,
just one other thing. We're going to show you a little video about riots. Now, I don't know what it's like here in Ireland, but there's again a big fear that more riots are going to happen in the UK. Poverty is getting worse. We're about to have a VAT increase. I don't know if you've heard there's changes of the welfare system. All of this is due to come after April. So we've had a cold winter so far, lots of snow, everybody's buckling down, and everything's fairly quiet at the moment. But if we get a hot summer, if we get lots of people hungry, having to pay extra, they're now going to be paid monthly rather than fortnightly, there's a big worry that people are going to get out in the street. The problem when people start mulling and walking around the streets is they get the opportunity to speak together and start to say, I'm sick of it, and an anger builds up. So there's some really fear by universities like Manchester, understanding if the communities kick off again, what's going to happen. So I think this has a little bit of a historical significance because it's recently happened, but there's a big potential also that it's going to be happening within the next 6 months, or at least not.
So what we're basically going to show is what happened in Manchester near the universities in 2011.
Yeah. So again, referring back to if you can think, and you all here live on the border of a university, but think about the relationship between civil unrest, if it kicks off, what does it feel like as the community? And then also what happens from the institution side.
Is everybody okay with that? Everybody get what they're doing right? So we'll show the video and then get people to work. We'll get you working in pairs if that's okay. Yeah. So get the video on it. So just before you start, so what we want you to do, please, if everybody got some note paper, yeah, jot down some notes. When we actually, what we want you to do, just before we start, we need a headline. Yeah, headline. Okay, a headline from what you see, 2 headlines, and then 2 or 3 paragraphs of prose, please. So a written narrative, 2 or 3 paragraphs of prose. One is for the community, one is for the university.
Has everyone got a piece of paper or paper they can share? No, we'll just wait.
Does it want you kind of there so anybody we're all okay?
Yeah.
You do. We're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's
go.
Right, so everybody okay?
Everybody regroup? Yeah.
Video on? Everything right? You all right? So you will see in the video, one side is a wall, that's the university
But
side.
you got the lights down there. Lights. Might get a better image than you see. You won't go full screen. Go full screen. So we'll do what we see.
take your time. That's 5 minutes for the thinking about a community, the community side with the headline. 5 minutes about thinking about if you're within the university or talking to a university or the council or a large institution.
And then we're going to select a few people to come forward to just read out what they've done. And then Martin's going to fill a few in. That'll be good. Okay, off you go.
Got some headlines? If we just have a couple, then we might all be able to speak about the issue. We've talked a bit too much now. We're running out of time.
Martin's cracking his whip.
So, can we have? Does anyone like to volunteer? Be able to stand up and say their headlines.
Yeah, you said you wanted to go on camera.
Only if I'm skinny.
Come on. Okay, you will keep going.
Come on,
Tina, come on. Okay, so Tina, I'm Deirdre and this is Tina. And so Tina, do you want to explain what we thought about the...
Yeah, we said for our first headline from the community point of view, we said it'd be more kind of that it was an aggressive attack. So we said riot police attack unarmed, and then we kind of had students / individuals who weren't sure from the clip who was attacked. But then from the university point of view, we said they might want to have it more of to appear that it was protecting the university kind of, and trying to downplay that it was a vicious assault. So we said potential damage to university averted by police response. So that way it would be kind of, they're still reporting what happened. There was still a police response, which was kind of an attack, but they're more saying that it was stopping a potential damage rather than just an unprovoked aggressive attack.
Great, thank you very much.
Very good, yeah. Excellent.
Thank you. So, one more volunteer.
Shall we get in the group there? Do you want to come forward? Come on. Yeah. Yeah, come on. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was good. Excellent, yes. Aggressive attack. Okay.
Very short. The community response, I suppose.
Who are you first?
Sorry?
Who are you?
My name's Barry.
Okay, Barry.
How's it going?
Yep.
And the headline for the community would be Violent Police Reaction Near University Campus. Locals capture on camera incident where youth was assaulted by riot police. Was this a use of excessive force or were they justifiable actions? Okay, that's just kind of a narrative.
Yeah.
And a very brief uni narrative would be rioting youths apprehended in vicinity of university. Youths rioting near campus are restrained by, that's as far as we got, by restrained by overworked force. Okay, how's that?
Very good, that's excellent, yeah. That's very good, both very good, excellent, thank you, yeah, that's good. What are some of the kind of challenges did you feel about doing that? Just general challenges.
Oh, well, just thinking about from one perspective to the other, trying to think what was important for each group. So what was important for the community was safety, and what was important, going back to what you said in the very beginning, the two priorities for the university were how would things affect their research and how would things affect their student population and their recruitment of SAFE. So we framed the first part around what we felt was important for the community and the second around priority.
Well done, yeah, so you framed two distinct agendas, didn't you, basically, which is very, very important, that's good. And you said, what kind of challenge did you find, do you feel?
Well, you know, I suppose looking at it from the two kind of polar opposites, really, like I would think that the university would want to play down the fact that potentially maybe the rioters were students. So, you know, they would want to frame it in terms of maybe local youths or keep it as vague as possible and you know, and try and maybe place more of the blame on the community as opposed to, like, not the university community, but maybe kind of random youths that are rampaging on the streets. But who knows, there could have been students that were rioting.
Highly likely. A number of students were arrested and records. And
I think what's excellent. Yeah, I think what's unique for obviously in this room, it's a bit of like I said, a prototype, into a bit of an experiment. I mean, in reality, the university reporting would be very distinct from the community, wouldn't it? You know, you've got two distinct bodies, so there's a massive dislocation between the two. I think at the moment we've got the situation where researchers go into the community, exploit the community, get the information back, take the information back, articulate it to their own agenda, basically, don't they? You know, there's a bit of an agenda with the community, but it's ultimately their own agenda. And I think what we're trying to, the purpose of this exercise, what we're trying to do is, like I said, it's this prototyping exercise. We get people, you know, to actually do the imagery, to write the narratives, to write the imagery, to feed back. And what we've got then in effect is what we call a meta-narrative. And that's the challenge. The challenge, as we're moving forward, is to bring these different narratives together from the community, from the academic, given that we're, you know, all of us are academics studying academic work, etc., or teaching it. And that the real challenge is the blending, isn't it? It's the blending of these narratives to get something which is approximating to the truth, or something which can then form part of the basis of the intervention. And I think this has got to go, and this is what we've found, is that the hero business has got to go at some stage, hasn't it? You know, you're not a hero, you're not John Wayne riding into that bloody community, are you? You know, trying to sort it out. So what we're trying to say is that it's this blending, this meta-narrative elements, putting all the things together, where we can believe that there could actually be some sort of like prototyping, small prototypes of community, economic and social regeneration. And the news is vital because the news is the bloodstream of the community. It's a bloodstream, isn't it? And especially as we're entering more and more into this digital age, big data, smart cities, urban prototyping, urban technological infrastructures, information and data is going to become increasingly more the bloodstream of these communities. You know, the governments are pushing it in Ireland, in the UK, all over the world, that information-led, digital economic-led technological change is the future of these economies. You know, manufacturing is not going to come back. You know, we work with people who think it is, but it isn't, is it? And I think everybody in the right mind knows that we're never going to have manufacturing coming back as our economies become cheaper, but it's never going to be on the scales which we've had in the past, the 20s, 30s, 50s, 60s, 70s. It's never going to be on the same scale. So what I'm saying is that people are looking for the future of society and the future of the economics. And what the governments are saying now is the digital economy, technology is the future. And what we're saying is that that's got big implications for the news and how news translates into economic and social regeneration, links to the researchers, links back to the community.
And also, on top of that, it's opening up dialogue. So starting to speak, starting to understand that there's a relationship between research and this sort of location is really important. Interestingly, the things that you just drew out, core issues both for the university as well as the local community, safety. Understanding what the safety for students are, for local residents. And the other thing that clearly came in your two positions was notions of what is the community. So big institutions in the university have to start to understand they are within, or have a role to play within the existing communities. So to see the communities as linked, not islands, as Gary spoke about before. So in opening up some of the dialogue, we can identify issues such as safety, concern, buildings, sharing of knowledge, not locking things down and isolating away. So I think that's very important.
Question? Open up to questions. We've got time for some questions, Martin. Yeah. Anybody got any questions?
Just wondering, have you considered another level up again, which is that, you know, you're talking about academics coming under pressure from universities to meet a particular set of criteria, and I don't disagree with you on that at all. I think it's a very valid point. But equally, universities are also subject to external funders' criteria. And those external funders, it seems to me, probably see the local level as a non-issue, and to be honest with you, don't value the national level as much as they do the international level. For them, it's international research that matters. Increasingly, it's international students that matter as well, where teaching is actually seen to be a feature of their concerns at all.
But so
universities in turn...
Well, the model's unsustainable, isn't it? I mean, I talked to... Last week I was talking to the second most successful computer scientist in England, a guy called Nick Jennings. He's one of the fathers of big data, which all these companies are talking about. And he's really worried about the future of the UK technological base. He teaches classes of 100 students, and 2 are from the UK, and 98 are from China and India. And you've got a government pushing that the future, and also in Ireland they're saying they're pushing that the future is going to be the digital economy, and technology is going to grow these societies. So one thing is your question, I think it's right, but ultimately, partly right, but partly I don't agree with him. The bulk of the budget in universities in England and Ireland and Europe is from teaching, right? There's no university in Europe which can survive on research alone. In America, yes, but not in the UK, not in Ireland. They need a teaching budget. And you find, when I talk to students, lots of students, when I'm travelling, a lot of them are bored of what they're getting, and they don't find it very useful, and they don't find it very, very relevant. So there's issues, you know what I mean, coming across all different directions. And we were having this discussion with Martin earlier on, in that education is about giving, ultimately. It's a charitable job, whether we like it or not. The best teachers are people who can give more to people, yeah? The trouble is that a culture's grown up over the last 30 years which is about taking. And the most successful academics don't give anymore, they take. That's what I believe.
Well, I think that there's value also in the local. It's neglected or now non-understood. There's so much already intellectual capital. So while we keep looking at the possibility of international students, the money that can be international, there is a whole body of wealth that already exists quite close within the way people are surviving, the way people are innovating, the way that they're drawing on the relationships, you know, the way people do things quite close and locally is very important.
I don't disagree with you at all, but I think that if you were going to establish a structure which will enable universities to better engage with the communities in which they are based, which I think is a very valuable goal, I think that you can't just address individual academics. I think you actually have to look at the relationship between universities as institutions and those bodies that determine the future of the universities themselves.
I agree, I think, but you know, we can only do so much, and our agenda is to try to explain to as many academics as we can, but also it has to be, again, the communities have to do it for themselves. So there has to be some action and some reinvigoration of people to understand that they're not ivory towers, that there are also people willing to engage and to open up the doors and think about shared resources. So we're sort of thinking bottom-up grassroots movements rather than, you know, we're not at professorial level. We're not on any boards where we can influence. Hopefully, maybe at some point, but so if we keep doing what we can, at least we might.
You've got to frame an agenda. It's like you can frame agendas. You know what I mean? And people buy into agendas if they believe it's possible. You know, framing agendas is not a difficult task to do. And once people buy into it, whether it's a university or in a community or whatever, then you're aware, then aren't you? You know. But it's a difficult environment. I agree. It's a difficult environment to work in at the moment because people are frightened. You know, people are frightened. They'll just follow what people tell them. Public senior people will bully them to do what they don't particularly want to do, but they just do it because they know that they fear the consequences. What are the consequences?
Okay, we better leave it there. I just want to thank Gary and Anita again for coming over, and thanks to the MA students for turning up on their week off.
Thank you for coming.